Okay, we're rolling.
This is an interview at the New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York, 15th of February 2006, approximately 10:45 a.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russage. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Paul Sigmund Bobinski, date of birth was 12/17/46, Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had gone to Clemson University and Tufts University Dental School.
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, enlisted.
Why did you decide to enlist?
I didn't really know where I wanted to go or how I wanted to work. I thought that would give me a couple of years to kind of sort things out and get a little bit of extra experience. You know, even when coming out of school after 4 years of school, you're still not ready for a lot of stuff that they throw at you in private practice, and I thought that would be a good way to kind of ease into it rather than jump in cold.
Why did you select the Army?
I had a good friend from college who lived around the Washington, D.C. area, and I used to visit a lot, and we used to go out and party a lot, and I thought I had the best chance of getting stationed around Washington if I was in the Army, as opposed to the Navy or the Air Force, but it didn't quite work out that way because I wound up in Fort Jackson in South Carolina.
Okay. When did you go into the service?
It was September of '72.
Okay. Could you tell us about what going in as a dentist? You obviously didn't have basic training.
We spent a month listening to red tape lectures in Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio. There again, I feel guilty telling this, but they put us up in the Sheraton Motel with a swimming pool and sent a shuttle over every morning, brought us back at the end of the day. I mean, they gave us a cost of living allowance. You could go out to restaurants all the time. It really wasn't a hardship.
Now, were you an officer? Did you go in as an officer?
Captain.
Captain, okay. How long was this, quote, basic training?
1 month.
Okay.
Then I went back to Fort Jackson.
And basically that's where you stayed until the end?
Yeah, the rest of the time I spent there, the rest of the 3 years was in Fort Jackson.
Mm-hmm. What was it like there? What were your duties? What was your equipment like? So on?
Facilities were excellent. I was very fortunate because I worked in almost a brand new hospital. They had just put up Moncrief Army Hospital maybe 2-3 years before I got there. And I worked as a general dentist in an oral surgery clinic in the hospital. My job was to treat people who worked in the hospital so they wouldn't have to go to the other areas around the base, which is fairly large, and lose a lot of man hours. They could just run downstairs to our clinic and get what they had to have done and not have to go travel. Mm-hmm. Save time.
Mm-hmm. Now, so being in a new facility, then the equipment was very up to date?
Oh yeah, yeah.
How did it compare to what you trained when you were in dentistry school?
It was much better. Mm-hmm. When I did spend almost a year in the dependent clinic, and the equipment there was adequate, but it wasn't really.
Now, what do you mean by dependent?
Dependents, wives and children.
Okay. So they received their care through the military, then?
At that time they did, but they kind of phased that out after a while. I know from keeping in touch with some friends who stayed in the area there, the dependents were even retirees were not treated on the base anymore. They kept doing less and less. It was mostly active duty.
Mm-hmm. Where did you live while you were on the base at Fort Jackson?
First year I was there, I lived in the bachelor officers' quarters. Then I lived off base after I got married in just an apartment complex.
Did you meet your wife in service?
No, I met her when I was in dental school.
Okay. What was it like there as an officer? Some of the functions you attended, and so on. social life, I guess?
There wasn't a heck of a lot that was official. Once a month, I think they would have the hail and farewell parties at the club, where they would welcome people who were coming in and saying goodbye to people who were leaving. Other than that, it was just, whoever you made friends with, you socialized with. I happened to have another buddy from college living in the area, and I used to spend a lot of time with him and his family. They lived obviously off base. So I didn't spend a lot of time on base socializing. Most people didn't. Unless I suppose that people were really, gung-ho career types who were looking to advance their rank.
So did you do a lot of socializing off base then, with local people, or?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. But they're also for instance, in our little part of the apartment complex, one of the guys lived right below us was another guy another dentist who worked on the base. And then there were a lot of different apartment places around the area, and the various dentists and the physicians would be in these areas, and we could just go, swap apartments and times, parties, and so on, dinners. I found that the people in the service were very congenial and sociable.
I know in the service you get a broad spectrum of people, and I know there's a lot of poorer people that enter the service. Did you notice any special problems taking care of their teeth? I mean, were they in worse shape than some?
Yeah, you did notice that there was a certain amount of, there were more problems with people who were from the lower economic rungs, and they were definitely there. I mean, these people came from all over, and you knew that they were there because they probably had nothing else to do, and at the time Vietnam was on. I don't know if they were still drafting people or not. It was it was winding down, but they were still doing it, and but they were there. Yeah, and there was a definite socioeconomic thing going on where these people didn't have good dental care prior to coming into the service.
So your work could be pretty challenging at times.
No more challenging than what I'm doing now. But then again, in our area where we live, it's economically depressed. I mean, there's a lot of poverty around where we are.
Now, where do you live now?
Hoosick Falls.
Okay. And how long have you been there? Or is it
30 years.
So you find some similarities then with the economic structure of the people?
Yeah, because I've also noticed that, and you may have seen this too when you were at Central School, a lot of the kids go into the service after they get out of high school.
Yeah.
They don't want to hang around town and work in a factory. They're not going to college, so the military is an option.
Now, what were your officers like that you...
The ones I had?
Yes.
Almost all of them were really good people. Yeah, I really liked them a lot. They were real good to me.
Now, on the form you filled out, you said that there was no one experience that stood out, that you compared your unit to somewhat like the MASH TV show. Why?
It just was. We had a good group of people working in our clinic. In fact, in both of the clinics that I worked at, it was just nobody took everything super seriously. I mean, I'm not talking about the dental work, but it wasn't strict military. What do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Decorum. You didn't go around saluting everybody and all that stuff. We were much more laid back, I'd say, than the line people who were really...
I was going to ask you, do you think because this was a hospital site that it was a different structure, with the military decorum than if you were
Yeah, I think so.
somewhere else?
I think so.
Mhm.
There used to be a little bit of resentment among the career people and the line officers because we came in as captains, and I think there was resentment there that they were working their rear ends off to try to advance their rank, and we just kind of waltzed in and, way ahead of them, I guess.
Now, did they pay the dental and medical people a little bit more money than, say, the infantry captain because of what you would be making on the outside? Is there any sort of
Yeah, there was
difference?
some of that, but it was still, we weren't getting paid a heck of a lot, I mean, compared to what you could make on the outside. Salaries were decent, but they weren't, you could make much more money if you were in private practice somewhere else.
Now, were there some friends that stood out more than others, acquaintanceships that you made while you were in service that
Yeah,
stood out more?
yeah, I'm still friends with one. My wife and I are friends with this one couple they still live down in Columbia. Talk to them from time to time. Haven't visited for a while, but we have over the years.
Are there any experiences that you had that stand out more than others that you could talk about?
One that was totally unrelated to dentistry or the service even. One of my friends drowned in a canoeing accident. It was in the spring of '73. And 3 guys went in a canoe to this river about maybe 75 to 100 miles away from where the base was. And they thought they were going to get in and just take a leisurely canoe trip. It wasn't whitewater. But Deliverance had just come out like the year before. And one of the guys who was big on the canoeing was almost obsessed with that. He really wanted to do whitewater canoeing in the worst way. But they went into this river, which happened to be at flood stage, and they didn't wear any life jackets, which was foolish. Evidently the canoe flipped on something, branch, tree, whatever, submerged, because I'd say the river was probably about 8 feet higher than it should have been, or normally was. And when the canoe flipped, and they had 2 life jackets, and being foolishly macho, they said, well, if one guy can't wear one, then none of us will, And 2 of them got out, and 1 didn't. And we spent this happened on a Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. We spent Monday, I think, through Wednesday, searching, the woods around the river, looking for the body, which we didn't find at that point. It surfaced a few months later, or what was left of it, and the guy that I happened to be working for, my boss in the surgery clinic, had to go in and ID the body, according to the dental work, because it was unrecognizable as a human. They had asked me to go with them in the canoeing. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. I don't like being cold and or wet. And my parents were coming down to visit. They were on their way to Florida, so they were going to stop by, and I figured I better spruce my apartment up a little bit, make it presentable. And I said, no, I just don't have the time. And so they said, well, just drive one of the cars. They're going to take 2 cars, so they'll drop the canoe at one end and then drive down to the end where they were going to get out. And I said, no, I just don't have the time, so I skipped it. And I got a phone call from one of the guy's wives. It was about, 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, saying, this guy, Hank, disappeared, and they thought he had drowned. And sure enough,
Now, he was a dentist, you said?
Yeah.
Also.
He had just graduated at the same time I did. No, he was from New Orleans. I think he went to, I think it was LSU Dental School.
Now, what was life like for your wife?
It was a little bit difficult for her because she came from just outside Boston, and to go, the first time in her life to go anywhere, really. Here she was in the middle of, South Carolina, so there's some culture shock there. And she adapted pretty well, I thought. She made friends easily. And she got a job. First she worked in a McDonald's because she just didn't want to stay in the house. So she found a job in the McDonald's, which was right down the road from where we lived. And she quit that after about I don't even think it was a week. Then she wound up getting a job on the base as an x-ray tech because she was trained to do various things in the dental office. And she worked in this other clinic. They wouldn't let husband and wife work together in the clinic, same clinic. She worked on the base, but not in the same clinic for the rest of the time that she was there, which was about 2 years, almost 2 years.
Now, you mentioned on here, you said you regret not staying in the military for a career, but then you also, off camera, talked about that a little bit. You want to talk about why you didn't?
Primarily because I didn't want to subject my children and wife to moving around constantly. I had a little bit of experience with that as a kid because we used to spend winters in Florida from Connecticut, and I had to go to school in Florida. And my parents, instead of renting in the same school district where I would have gone to the same school, we went to the same area around Miami and Hollywood, but we didn't stay in the same school district. So, you bounced around. We were just there for a couple of months and then gone, then back home. I didn't like that experience. I didn't think I wanted my kids to have to go through that, which they didn't.
Okay. When did you leave service?
September of '75.
And is that when did you go directly to Hoosick Falls from there? Or?
Came home, went to Connecticut, went to Boston, looked around Boston a little bit, and wound up in Hoosick Falls in September. Yeah, it was also in September that year, '75. Started
How
working
did you
in
pick Hoosick
October.
Falls?
One of my friends from high school's parents from Connecticut, had sold their house down there and moved up to East Rupert, and they bought a little old farm and rehabbed it, and I used to come up to visit, and I liked the area. I thought I'd probably go to Vermont to practice because I liked Vermont. Then traveling up 22, I went through Hoosick Falls and I knew where it was. By grapevine, I was offered the job to work in the town, and the guy said, "You probably don't know where this little place is. It's Hoosick Falls." I said, "Oh yeah, I know where it is." And we just came in, and I said to my wife, "Well, we'll see how it is for a year or two, and then if we don't like it, we'll leave." But here it is 30 years later.
Now, have you joined any veterans organizations? Because I know you were not overseas, but
No.
by your dates you never joined. And you did say you stayed in contact with at least one person that was in service with you?
Oh yeah.
Just the one, no one else? Or?
Well, I've seen other people over the years, but not recently. My boss, I saw two of the guys who were in charge of the clinics that I worked in. I've seen both of them over the years away from the service, but it's been quite a while.
Now, I know you had your education already, but did you use the GI Bill at all for anything?
No.
Okay. How do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life?
I think it was positive.
In what
Definitely
ways?
gave me an opportunity to get more experience to do what I do. I felt much more comfortable working in a private office as opposed to being just coming out of school, which is Believe me, 4 years sounds like a long time. It's nowhere near enough.
Okay, you have a picture, if you just hold it up in
yeah.
front of you, like this.
They get the dust off. It was up in the attic.
Just hold it like that. Can you tell Wayne where and when that was taken?
This was, you mean, the base and everything?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. This was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. This was in front of the Bachelor Officers' Quarters called Kennedy Hall. They had just put this up. It was brand new. We had to wait a little bit for them to get it all together.
Okay.
And this is in September, or I believe it was in 73 or late 72, maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much for the interview.
That's it?
Yep.